guys, and welcome to part 4 in the series Strange Headstones and the Stories Behind Them. Today we're back in East Tennessee in the Cove Creek community in Roane County, Tennessee. It's near Kingston. And I'm talking about Felix Breazeale and his strange headstone, which reads Felix Breazeale, 1864 to 1943. He attended his own funeral June 26, 1938, approximately 5 years before his death. Now, Felix drew a lot of attention in 1938, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the events that happened in 1938. I'm going to share many newspaper articles about Felix Breazeale, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about all the different stories that are out there about Felix's life. Now, there's actually a film called Get Low that was released in 2009 that is actually based on Felix's life in East Tennessee. But the stories are a little bit different than what actually happened in Felix's life. And I want to talk a little bit about that while sharing these articles. So, Felix Breazeale, he lived in a little home alone in Roane County, Tennessee. He was from the Kingston area, and Breazeale was actually from a very prominent family. I think it said his dad was a judge or a lawyer. There were many judges and lawyers in his family, and he was a very intelligent, smart man. But he chose to separate himself from society and lived life as somewhat like a hermit in East Tennessee. Now, the movie that depicts Breazeale's life, it tells a story of a man who was in love with someone who was married. And a series of unfortunate events happened when him and this woman planned on running off together, but her husband found out, and her husband ended up hurting her, and when Breazeale went to check on her, there was this whole big thing that happened, and the house ended up burning down, and the husband and wife were killed in this fire. And Breazeale was blamed for all of these events, but that's not actually what happened, and why Breazeale isolated himself from society. One of these stories, which comes from some of the historians in Roane County, and the story, and it can be verified by newspaper articles and court records as well, is a man by the name of Smith was murdered, I think he was law enforcement, and some of Breazeale's friends talked him into taking the blame for this murder, even though he did not commit this crime. But they convinced him that he could be indicted and or acquitted of this murder because there was no evidence, and they agreed to give him a large sum of land if he would do this for them. And the story goes that he did this, and then the man who was actually responsible for the murder, he passed away, and his wife forged some documents which caused Breazeale to not get the land that was promised to him. But he was acquitted of this murder and did not serve. He did spend some time in jail, but he wasn't charged with the murder ultimately. But this led to a lot of people disliking Breazeale because I guess the guy that was murdered was a well-liked person in the community, and Breazeale just isolated himself. And I think I saw somewhere that he isolated himself for nearly 40 years. He just lived on his farm. He had a small home. He had a mule that he had trained for 17 years. Its name was Mule, and they said that this mule would do anything that he told him. He could point at the mule and say, "Mule, roll over," and the mule would roll over. He could point at any random stall, and the mule would go in it. He just lived his life on his farm, farmed his land, and his friend was his mule. I find that he actually did have a lady companion, according to some of these newspaper articles, but he is quoted as saying that he never married because the woman that he loved he couldn't have. and the women that wanted him, he didn't want. So he decided to live out his entire life without marrying anyone. But regardless of his reason behind isolating himself from the world, in 1938 he got an idea, and it's said that the whole reason that this funeral planning began was he wanted to get up and give a speech and give his side of his life, his side of his story, and the events that actually happened, so that people wouldn't hate him anymore. Unfortunately, that didn't happen at this funeral, but this funeral was huge. Thousands, it said between 8,000 to 10,000 people showed up at Breazeale's living funeral, and it was highly publicized. Of course, the hermit living in the mountains by himself announces that he's having a funeral while he was alive, and that drew all kinds of attention, and thousands of people came to this funeral. And I'm just going to share all of these newspaper articles that I found while I'm talking, and when I get done talking, I'll continue to show the articles until all the articles that I found you guys have seen. And in the description box below, I'm going to share links to various websites that talk more in detail about the history of Breazeale, the murders that supposedly happened, and things like that. But in Cave Creek Cemetery in 1938, there was a crowd. There was thousands and thousands of people. It said that it was so crowded and it was so hot. It was in June. People were fainting from the heat. There were vendors selling soda. There were buses with written on the side of them, this bus is to the Breazeale funeral. It became crazy really quick. It became so crazy that after it was over, Breazeale was invited to several different radio stations to talk, and he was actually sent to New York City to talk to Ripley, to be on Ripley's Believe It or Not. So, when Breazeale actually did pass away in 1943, someone placed this headstone there that actually reads, he attended his own funeral June 26, 1938, approximately 5 years before his death. Which is, it's a very odd story, but it's also said that he felt like he didn't have much time left, and it was getting near his 74th birthday when he had this funeral, and he just wanted to see his funeral. I don't know. He wanted to see his funeral, and he wanted people to know who he was and not think that he was some crazy person living in the mountains. Because, like I said, he came from a prominent family. They were very intelligent people, and he just isolated himself because of all the rumors and things like that. But that's the story that I have on Felix Breazeale, 1864 to 1943. He lived near Kingston and Cave Creek. And like I said, in the description box below, I'm going to leave some links if you're interested in reading more about the real Felix Breazeale. And also, there is that movie, it's called Get Low, if you're interested in watching that. But like I said, the story is a little different than Felix's real life and what really happened. But that's the story that I have today. I'm going to continue to let the articles play, and as always, I appreciate all of your likes, comments, views, and shares. And if you like the content of my channel, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. And if you hit the little bell button, you'll be notified anytime I upload any new videos. And remember, a person is never forgotten until the last time their name is spoken. Thank you. Bye-bye.